A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Matthew. At that time, Jesus said to his apostles, "Have no fear of them, for nothing is covered that will not be revealed, or hidden that will not be known. What I tell you in the dark, say in the light, and what you hear whispered, proclaim on the housetops. And do not fear those who kill the body, but cannot kill the soul. Rather, fear him who can destroy both soul and body in hell. Are not 2 sparrows sold for a penny? And not one of them will fall to the ground apart from your Father? But even the hairs of your head are all numbered. Fear not, therefore, you are of more value than many sparrows. So everyone who acknowledges me before men, I will also acknowledge before my Father who is in heaven. But whoever denies me before men, I also will deny before my Father who is in heaven." Back in 2019, history professors in the United Kingdom translated a letter from the 14th century about a nun named Joan of Leeds who faked her own death to get out of her commitment to the church. William Melton, the Archbishop of York, wrote the letter in 1318 that describes Joan with the help of accomplices escaping the convent. The Archbishop wrote that Joan crafted a dummy in the likeness of her body in order to mislead the devoted faithful, and she had no shame in procuring its burial in a sacred space amongst the religious of that place. We all have trouble following through with our commitments sometimes, but few of us quit in such a spectacular manner as Joan of Leeds did. To fake your own death to get out of a commitment is a clear sign that you were never really committed to begin with. On the other hand, there is an amusing but thought-provoking story by a Danish theologian, Søren Kierkegaard, about the difference between making a contribution and making a commitment. The story is set in a small town where the citizens are very proud of their fire chief. He was a pleasant man and well liked by everyone in town. One day, the fire chief rounded up his brigade to respond to a dangerous fire. But when the fire brigade arrived, they couldn't reach the fire because all the townspeople were in the way. The citizens of this town thought they would come out and help their beloved fire chief. Yet the citizens were only equipped with the small buckets. As they threw their tiny streams of water at the fire, they commented that they believed in the good work of the fire chief and wanted to make their own contribution to it. The fire chief, in a rage, shouts at them, "Get out of here! Fire like this are not for well-meaning people who want to make limited contributions. Such situations demand firemen who are ready to risk their lives in putting out the flames." Kierkegaard is making the point with this story that many people want to contribute to Jesus' work, but few want to commit to it. And that's the focus of our Bible passage for today. Do we understand what it means to be a follower of Jesus? Is he asking us to make a contribution to his work or a commitment? In this passage, Jesus is saying, "I am asking you to trust everything to me." What would that look like in your life, to trust everything to Jesus' care? How would you live differently from the way you do now? And what could you accomplish for God's sake if you made that decision today? Jesus finishes this passage by saying, "Whoever does not take up their cross and follow me is not worthy of me. Whoever finds their life will lose it, and whoever loses their life for my sake will find it." And that's why we have to trust everything to Jesus. We have to trust that the will of God is going to be a lot better and a lot bigger than we can see right now. After all, Jesus wasn't asking us to do anything he didn't do himself. Look at his words again. "Whoever does not take up their cross and follow me." For Jesus, the cross meant death. But because of Jesus' death and resurrection, the cross is new life for us. And that new life isn't conventional or comfortable. It will separate us from the values, priorities, and rewards of our culture. It may separate us from the people we love most. When we were in school, we used to play a game called cross purposes. You take a group of people and split them up into two teams. One half of the participants would get the question or subject. The other half would get an answer or explanation. Then everyone would be set loose to find the explanation that matched their subject. The game could be very funny if people accidentally matched up the wrong subjects and explanations. Today, we use the name of this game to describe a less pleasant situation. When we say that people are working at cross purposes, we mean that they have conflicting goals that can't be reconciled. That's what Jesus wanted us to think about. The way of the cross is incompatible with the ways of the world. If we are followers of Jesus, our lives shouldn't make sense to others. Our commitment to God's purposes, our trust in God's plans should make us look radical and foolish and out of step with our own culture. And that brings us to the second thing Jesus is telling us in this passage. Trust that God cares about your life. Jesus challenges his disciples to live boldly, to stand up for their faith in the ways that put them at odds with the religious establishment and the Roman government. Then he says, "Do not be afraid of those who kill the body but cannot kill the soul. Rather, be afraid of the one who can destroy both soul and body in hell. Are not 2 sparrows sold for a penny? Yet not one of them will fall to the ground outside your Father's care. And even the very hairs of your head are all numbered. So don't be afraid. You are worth more than many sparrows." And that's why Jesus can tell us to not be afraid, even in the face of challenging and uncertain circumstances. Even the very hairs of your head are all numbered. So don't be afraid. You are worth more than many sparrows. Your life is not meaningless or random. The God who created our vast and awesome universe knows you individually, and God values you. The God who made you in His image will never leave you or forsake you. If we really believe this, our fears would evaporate. We could take up our cross and follow Jesus with confidence, knowing that a God who loves us enough to count the very hairs on our heads has a purpose for our lives. And the final thing Jesus is saying in this passage is, if you trust everything to me, you will find abundant and eternal rewards. Jesus said, whoever finds their life will lose it, and whoever loses their life for my sake will find it. There is joy and peace in living for God's purposes, a joy and peace that no earthly rewards can match. There is a reason that this verse is quoted in all 4 Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. It's an ironclad promise from the God who willingly chose to give up His own life to save us. God created us for a life of abundant joy, peace, and purpose that can only be found in knowing Him and living for His purposes. In 1930, a woman named Alberta Skinner moved to Czechoslovakia to serve as a missionary there. When the communist government of Russia annexed that part of the country in the late 30s, government officials gave Alberta an ultimatum. You can leave and never come back, or you can stay and never leave. Alberta knew that the communists were determined to stamp out religion. She knew the church in Czechoslovakia would come under tremendous pressure from the new government, and so she decided to stay. I want you to meditate on this question in the coming week. Is what you are living for worth dying? Does your life reflect the priorities and purposes of God? Are you living out your faith with boldness and confidence, even when that separates you from the surrounding culture? Finally, do you trust Jesus' promises enough to take up your cross and follow Him? If so, you will discover a joy, hope, and peace that only come from living for eternal rewards. Amen.